Hello everyone. Today is day 3 of our blog of Paula Gooder's series, The Wheat and the Weeds. And today we're looking at Matthew 13, verses 24 to 30 and 36 to 43. Where then did these weeds come from? Who has not asked that question sometime in their lives? Maybe you've read or watched the news and thought, how did our world get to this point? One headline after another paints a more challenging picture. Maybe you've asked yourself, how did my life get like this? And we can all list the hurts of life, the betrayals and resentments, our fears and our loneliness. Perhaps you face the death of a loved one, a devastating illness, or a trauma. Where then did these weeds come from? Like the slaves in today's reading, we often live with the assumption that if we work hard, everything should be as we would want. Master, they asked the farmer, did you not sow the good seed in your field? Of course he did, and they know he did. And that's why they're so surprised when they discover the weeds. The weeds have shattered their assumptions. Where then did these weeds come from? They want to know what happened and who is responsible. And so do we. That's what we want to know when we discover the weeds in our life. We look for an explanation and someone to blame. Far too often we see that in our political bickering, our Twitter posts, even in our private conversations. Unsurprisingly, Jesus is less interested in this way of thinking. He doesn't give it much time or attention. Jesus says the reality is that our lives and our world is a field in which good and evil, life and death, joys and sorrows reside side by side. The wheat and the weeds stand together in our world and in our lives. That, Jesus said, is what the kingdom of heaven is like. That's good news for us. It means that despite the weeds in and around us, the kingdom is still here. The weeds do not overcome the kingdom of God. But what about those weeds? What do we do about them? Well, Jesus says, let them grow together until the harvest. Don't you want us to pull up the weeds? The slaves asked the master. No, says Jesus, for in gathering the weeds, you uproot the wheat along with them. These aren't just generic weeds. The parable speaks of a particular weed called zizania. It's sometimes known as darnel or false wheat. It grows with the wheat and it looks like wheat. Its roots are entwined with the roots of the real wheat crop. The difference between the two is not at all obvious. What a surprise then, that the separation of the wheat and the weeds is not as black and white as Twitter, the media, our politicians, and our personal views would have us believe. In any event, we're not the ones to make that judgment. We're not the ones to uproot those we see as weeds. Jesus is very clear on that. Let them grow together until the harvest, he says. Jesus shows more interest in growth than in extermination. He's willing to wait and to be patient. If we are his followers, then we too should wait and be patient amongst the weeds in our life. While we wait patiently, let's not get too excited about the end of this parable. Let's not revel in and celebrate the end of the age and the coming of Jesus as some divine weed killer. So do we do nothing? No, Jesus says. There is plenty to do, and it will be a challenge. The words translated as let them in Jesus' parable, let them both grow, can also be translated as forgive them. It's the same words that Jesus spoke from the cross in St. Luke's account when he says, Father, forgive them. Luke 23, verse